For the determinants of supply, there are 7 of them. The acronym is TENTing. You have taxes, expectations, number of sellers, technology, input prices, natural disasters, and government regulations. All of these will determine how much a supplier is willing and able to sell, because it will change their ability to produce the number of goods. To match these determinants with the examples down below, we start off with number 1. New machine produces iPods faster. And just kind of scanning our tenting, that sounds a lot like technology. So we have a new machine, helps us to produce iPods faster. That's technology. Number 2, the federal government raises the minimum wage. That would be input prices. The reason being that if the factors of production, their prices change, such as workers have to get paid more, labor, then it's going to cost more to produce, and they're going to produce less of them. So the federal government raises the minimum wage. Number 3, government raises taxes. Sure enough, in our tenting model, there's a tax one. So anytime taxes change, they'd be willing and able to produce less, because if taxes go up, they have to spend more to produce the good, and they're going to produce less goods in the long run. Number 4, government mandates that all iPods be installed with tracking chips. This adds to the time that producers have to make the products, because they have to add this in. It's an additional step in producing iPods. It's going to take them longer to produce iPods, and thus produce them less. So, tracking chips. Number 5 is prices for the good will rise in the future. Although we don't use this often, the expectations for future oftentimes will tell a company when to sell goods at certain prices. So prices in the future go under expectations. Number 6, Buffalo Wild Wings opens in Homewood. That would be an example of number of sellers, because now we have one more restaurant in the Homewood area. So the number of sellers increases, so the number of goods sold will increase. Lastly, hurricane wipes out orange farms in Florida. That's an example of a natural disaster, because then the Florida orange growers will be able to sell less oranges, because some of them were lost in the natural disaster. Now for graphing supply, suppliers are more willing and able to sell goods at a higher price because they make more money. So instead of being downsloping like demand, where price is low, quantity is high, just the opposite is going to be true. When price is high, the businesses will want to sell more because they are going to make more money. So if we set up our graph, it's going to reflect that. So when it's at $2, they're going to be willing and able to sell 4 units. When it's at $4, they're willing and able to sell 8. $6, 12, $8, 16, and then $10 and 20. And this is how our supply curve looks. Turn to page 21 in your unit packets now. You want to keep your tenting supply sheet out that we just completed while we kind of run through these. I'll walk you through a few, and then I'll let you guys work on a few on your own, and I'll give you guys the answers. So to start off with, if the market's cola and the headline is sugar prices decrease, well, we have to try to think of, well, how does sugar and cola meet? What makes them in common? Well, sugar is used in the production of cola, so that is an input price or a factor of production because it helps produce the good. So if prices decrease, chances are the company is going to be able to produce more goods. So when we draw on our graph, price, quantity, we start off all of our graphs just like demand with just a single supply curve. And if we're going to produce more as a supplier, we shift the curve right. So just like before when I said in demand you have to think of shifting the curve right and left rather than up and down, this is where it becomes important, because shifting the curve to the right increases supply, not drawing the arrow up. And the determinant then would be input price. Number 2 is very similar. We have the market for car. The headline is steel prices rise. Well, what's the common denominator between steel and the cars? It's capital, it's a factor of production, input price. So we go over to the graph. Because steel prices rise, it's going to cost more to produce the cars. So chances are producers are going to make less. So we're going to have to decrease supply in this problem. So price, quantity, our regular supply line. When we decrease supply, we have to shift to the left. So I draw my arrow straight to the left, draw S2. And then for the determinant, once again, it's input price. For number 3, the market is beef. Headline, British farmers must destroy all potentially contaminated cows to avoid foot and mouth disease. This is a little bit trickier in terms of the determinant, but hopefully you guys can determine that, well, if he's going to have to destroy the cows, then probably the supply of beef is going to go down. So supply moves to the left, and the determinant for that one might go a couple different ways. But for the most part, we're going to call that natural disasters because it's a disease that's natural. So natural disasters would be the answer for the determinant on that one. But hopefully you could realize that the supply of cows is going to go down because they were destroyed. Now looking at CDs. If the music industry to slash price of CDs by half, we haven't talked about this one yet today, but if it's the good, we're changing the price of CDs. The market is CDs. When those match up, what does that mean we do? Just like in demand, when we change the price of the good, hopefully you realize that you move along the curve, you draw a couple dots, and the determinant would be change in price of the good. So we have not changed demand or supply, we have changed the quantity supplied, and that's why we move along the curve. Go ahead and try number 5 and number 6 on your own, the market supply for turkey and for sheep, and then I will give you guys the answers. But go ahead and take maybe 3 minutes and try out 5 and 6. Now let's see how you guys did. The market for turkey. What happens if the feed prices increase by 10%? What is feed to a turkey? Literally, it's an input, and since the price has changed, it's input price. Now, if the feed goes up, chances are the turkeys are going to be less well fed because the farmer is going to have to buy less feed. The turkeys won't be quite as big, so he won't get as much for them, or he might not get enough turkeys out of it. So the supply decreases to the left, and the determinant for that one would be input price. And then for the second problem, number 6, sheep. Rise in numbers of sheep raised as health report praises lamb. And this one we're going to have to kind of figure out the determinant, but hopefully you kind of realize we have price, quantity, you start off with supply. Rise in numbers of sheep raised as health report praises lamb. We have a health report, we have the number of sheep, so hopefully at least you can understand that the graph is going to increase because now there are more sheep being produced and supplied, And the determinant for there is kind of between a few, and the test won't ask you guys any questions about this, but it might be good to know that it's expectations, or it could also be natural disasters, although it's kind of the opposite of that. It's not a disaster, it's something good. Or it could be, you might say, number of sellers. So I won't put a determinant here, but hopefully at least you can realize that the supply increased.